My name is Emma Clark. I'm 31 years old, and 9 weeks ago I gave my father my left kidney and saved his life. On November 23rd, at his recovery celebration dinner, my mother stood up in front of 22 relatives, raised her champagne glass with the biggest smile I'd ever seen, and said these exact words, "To Jessica, my incredible daughter, the one who saved your father's life with her amazing fundraiser." The room exploded into applause. Glasses clinked. People cheered. Not a single person looked at me. I sat there at position 18 out of 22 seats, wearing a dress that showed the fresh 6-inch scar burning across my left side, 9 weeks of unpaid medical bills crushing my empty bank account, a body that will never be the same, while my own mother erased the kidney I donated like it never happened. Then my father grabbed my wrist under the table. His eyes were filled with something I'd never seen before, shame mixed with determination. He slid a folded napkin toward me. What I read on that napkin changed absolutely everything, and when my mother and sister finally discovered the truth weeks later, our entire family didn't just break apart, it completely exploded. If you're watching this right now, I need you to do something for me. Hit that subscribe button because this story gets so much more intense than you can imagine, and I share stories like this every single week about families, betrayal, and justice. Drop a comment telling me if you've ever felt invisible in your own family, because I read every single comment and your stories matter to me. But first, let me take you back to the beginning, to a lifetime of being erased. I work at Hope Bridge Education Fund, a small nonprofit in Charlotte that helps first-generation college students navigate financial aid and scholarships. My salary is $36,500 a year. I live in a studio apartment 20 minutes from my parents' house in a neighborhood my mother once described as unfortunate during a rare phone call. My mother invites me to family events maybe 5 times a year, and even then, her voice always carries this tone like she's checking off obligation. My sister Jessica is 36, 5 years older than me. She's the vice president of operations at Clark Medical Supply Company, the business my father founded back in 1998 when I was just 4 years old. Jessica makes $185,000 a year. She has a husband named Marcus, 2 kids, a house in the suburbs with a 3-car garage, and every single ounce of my mother's attention and approval. When Jessica joined the company back in 2015, I remember my mother's exact words at that year's Thanksgiving dinner. "Finally, someone in this family who understands what legacy means." She said it while looking directly at Jessica, her hand on my sister's shoulder, her voice filled with pride. I had just finished my master's degree in healthcare administration that same year. Nobody asked if I wanted to interview for a position at the company. Nobody mentioned that my degree was literally perfect for a medical supply business. I stopped going to most family events in 2023. I couldn't take another Christmas dinner sitting at the kids' table even though I was 30 years old, surrounded by my nephew and niece while the adults talked business and future at the main table. I couldn't handle another birthday party where my mother forgot to get me a card but gave Jessica a custom photo album. I couldn't survive another company milestone celebration where I wasn't invited because, as my mother explained the one time I asked, "It's really just for employees and board members, honey. You wouldn't be interested anyway." But on July 20th, 2025, someone still had my number. My father collapsed at the company's 27th anniversary gala. 200 people in black tie, speeches about growth and innovation and family values. I wasn't invited to that either. I learned about it from a LinkedIn post Jessica made the next morning, a professional photo of her looking concerned but composed with the caption "Family first, always." At 9:47 that night, my cousin Rachel texted me. "Your dad collapsed at the gala. They're rushing him to Presbyterian Hospital. Thought you should know." I was sitting in my apartment eating leftover pasta, watching a cooking show, wearing sweatpants with a hole in the knee. I changed into jeans and a clean shirt, grabbed my keys, and drove 25 minutes to the hospital. I arrived at 10:31. My mother and Jessica were in the waiting room, heads close together, whispering intensely about something. When my mother looked up and saw me walking toward them, her face didn't show relief or gratitude that I'd come. It showed annoyance, like I'd interrupted something private. I walked over to them and asked how he was. My mother's response was flat, almost mechanical. They're running tests. It's his kidneys. We're waiting for the nephrologist. Jessica barely looked up from her phone, her fingers still typing something, probably a work email or another social media update about the family crisis. I sat down 3 chairs away from them. Nobody spoke to me for 45 minutes. I watched my mother and Jessica whisper to each other, watched them take turns going to get coffee, watched them completely exclude me from every conversation. Finally, a doctor came out and spoke directly to my mother. I had to strain to hear from where I was sitting. Stage 4 kidney failure. He needs a transplant within 6 to 8 weeks or he'll be on dialysis for the rest of his life. We need to test family members for compatibility. A living donor is ideal if we can find a match. My mother glanced at Jessica with this look of concern and said, "We'll do whatever it takes." I wasn't included in that we. Nobody looked at me when the doctor mentioned testing family members. At 11:58 that night, the doctor finally let us see him briefly. My mother and Jessica went in together, arms linked like they were supporting each other through this tragedy. I waited in the hallway, sitting on an uncomfortable plastic chair, scrolling through my phone just to have something to do with my hands. When they came out 10 minutes later, my mother said, "You can go in if you want, but don't tire him out. He needs rest." Like I was some distant acquaintance who might overstay her welcome. I walked toward his room, and I heard my father's voice, weak and rough. "Is Emma here?" My mother didn't answer him. She just kept walking toward the elevator. I pushed open the door to his room. My father was hooked up to monitors, for lines running into both arms, oxygen tube under his nose. His skin looked gray, nothing like the strong, commanding man who'd built a multi-million-dollar company from nothing. When he saw me, tears actually filled his eyes. "I thought you'd come," he said. "Of course I came," I told him. He looked toward the door, then back at me. "Your mother said earlier today that you were probably too busy, that you don't really stay involved with family stuff anymore." I felt something crack inside my chest. My mother had been telling him that I was the one who pulled away, that I was the one who didn't care. I took his hand, careful not to disturb the four, and said, "I'm here, Dad. I'm not going anywhere." He squeezed my fingers with what little strength he had. "They said I need a new kidney. I don't want to ask you kids for something like this." I didn't even hesitate. "I'll get tested tomorrow, Dad. First thing tomorrow morning. I'll do it." He shook his head slightly. "You don't have to do that, Emma." But I did have to. I wanted to. "I want to," I said. As I left his room and passed my mother and Jessica in the hallway, I heard my mother whisper to my sister, her voice just loud enough for me to catch, "She'll probably test and then back out. You know how she is with commitment." I kept walking, but my hands were shaking so hard I had to shove them in my pockets. But wait, because what happened next set everything in motion. The next morning, I called the transplant coordinator at Presbyterian Hospital. My voice was steady when I said, "My name is Emma Clark. My father, Kenneth Clark, was admitted last night with kidney failure. I want to get tested as a living donor." The coordinator asked if I could come in that afternoon at 2. I said I'd be there. I didn't tell my mother or Jessica. I went alone, filled out the paperwork alone, gave blood samples alone, answered all the questions about my medical history alone. A week later, on July 28th, I got the call that changed my life. "Ms. Clark, you're a compatible match. Blood type O positive, tissue compatibility 98%, excellent kidney function. You're an ideal donor." I sat in my car in the hospital parking garage and cried, relief and dread mixing together until I couldn't tell which emotion was stronger. I called my father directly on his cell phone. "Dad, I got tested. I'm a match. I want to donate." His voice broke when he said, "Emma, you don't have to do this." "I know," I told him. "But I want to." There was a long silence on the phone, and then he said, "Your mother's going to have opinions about this." "Let her," I said. 2 days later, my mother called what she described as a family meeting at their house. My father, my mother, Jessica, and me, sitting in the formal living room that we only used for important discussions. My mother opened with, "We need to discuss Kenneth's transplant options in a mature, logical way." I said, "I'm a compatible donor. I'm willing to donate." The silence that followed felt like it lasted forever. My mother stared at me like I'd just announced I was joining a cult. "You tested without telling us?" "I wanted to be sure first," I explained. Jessica said, "I was going to test this week." That was a lie. She hadn't scheduled any appointment. I could see it in the way she glanced at our mother for backup. My mother turned to my father, her voice taking on that sweet, concerned tone she used when she wanted to seem reasonable. "Kenneth, what do you think? Do you want Emma to do this?" My father said quietly, "If she's willing, if she's a match, I don't want to wait for a cadaver donor. The list is 2 years long." My mother's jaw tightened in that way it did when she wasn't getting what she wanted. "We could find another living donor. A friend, a colleague, someone who isn't your daughter." I looked directly at her and asked, "Why?" "I'm a perfect match. I'm willing. What's the problem?" And my mother looked me straight in the eye and said, "The problem is you've never finished anything difficult in your life, Emma. I'm not sure you understand what you're committing to. If you've ever had a parent say something that just destroys you, hit that subscribe button and drop a comment about what they said, because I need you to know you're not alone in this. Those words stick with you, but watch what happens when you prove them wrong. Keep watching because the revenge in this story is absolutely worth it." I drove home that night in complete silence, my mother's words echoing in my head. But my father called me 2 hours later. "Emma, if you're sure about this, then let's do it. I trust you." 3 days later, on August 5th, Jessica called me, which was rare. She usually only texted. "I've been thinking," she said, "since you're donating, I want to do something to help too. I'm organizing a fundraiser for kidney disease awareness. We can raise money for research and help offset Dad's medical costs." It sounded nice, generous even. I said, "That's really thoughtful of you, Jess." She went on, "I'm thinking a charity gala, get company sponsors involved, maybe get some local news coverage. Turn this whole situation into something positive for the community." I felt uneasy but I couldn't pinpoint why. "Will the fundraiser mention that I'm donating?" I asked. "Of course," Jessica said, "it's all about the family coming together." But her tone was already shaping the narrative toward herself, I could hear it. A week later, I searched online for Jessica Clark fundraiser. I found the preliminary event listing. Jessica Clark Morrison Kidney Health Initiative, supporting the Clark family. My name appeared nowhere in the description. Not once. On August 18th, I had my final pre-surgery psychological evaluation with Sarah Mitchell, the hospital's social worker. She asked standard questions about my support system, my motivations, my understanding of the risks. Then Sarah asked me something that made me pause. "Have you felt any pressure from your family to donate?" I said carefully, "This is my choice." She looked at me over her glasses. "And do you feel seen by your family, appreciated for this decision?" I paused too long. Sarah made a note in her file. What I didn't know until months later was that after I left, Sarah wrote in her evaluation, "Donor is psychologically sound but family dynamics are concerning." Mother's language about patient is minimizing and dismissive. Flagging for post-surgery monitoring. That same afternoon, something happened that I only discovered later. My mother went to Sarah's office. She requested a private consultation. According to the incident report I eventually obtained, my mother said, and this is documented word for word, "Is there any way to delay this donation or find another donor? Emma isn't stable enough for this. When Sarah asked her to clarify, my mother said, "Emma has emotional issues. I'm worried she's doing this for attention. She doesn't have the maturity for this kind of decision." Sarah explained that I had passed all psychological evaluations with flying colors. My mother insisted she look closer at my mental state. Sarah documented the conversation and reported it to the Transplant Ethics Committee per hospital protocol. The Ethics Committee met on August 20th. They interviewed me separately, without telling me why. They concluded that I was fully informed, psychologically stable, and donating voluntarily. They noted in their report that my mother's concerns appeared to stem from controlling family dynamics rather than legitimate medical issues. They proceeded with approving the donation as scheduled. My mother's attempt to interfere was noted in my permanent file. September 14th, the night before surgery, I couldn't sleep. I scrolled through Jessica's Instagram and saw photos of her at fundraiser planning meetings. The caption said things like, "Doing everything I can for Dad, and family means everything to me." I felt sick to my stomach. At 11 that night, my father called. "Emma, are you awake?" "I am now," I said. "You can still back out," he told me. "No one will blame you." "I'm not backing out," I said firmly. "When you wake up tomorrow, you're going to be in real pain," he said. "I know, Dad." His voice got thick with emotion. "And I'll be okay because of you. I'll never forget that." I took a deep breath. "Promise me something," I said. "Anything. Don't let them erase this. Don't let Mom turn this into something it's not." There was a long pause. "I won't," he said. "I promise." September 15th, 2025, 5:30 in the morning. I arrived at the hospital in the dark. My mother and Jessica were already in the pre-surgery waiting area. I saw Jessica on her phone saying, "Yes, the surgery's today. I'll post updates once we know more. We're keeping it private for now, but I'll have a statement ready after the fundraiser." She was already planning how to frame the story before I'd even gone under anesthesia. At 6:15, I was in a hospital gown with an 4 in my arm. My father was wheeled past my bay on his way to his operating room. We made eye contact through the curtain. He mouthed, "Thank you." Dr. Monica Patel, the surgeon, explained the procedure one final time. 4 to 5 hours, laparoscopic if possible, significant pain during recovery. My mother and Jessica stopped by my bay for exactly 30 seconds. My mother said, "Good luck, Emma." Jessica said, "You're so brave." Then they left to wait in the family lounge. The anesthesiologist told me to count backward from 10. I got to 7. I woke up at 2:17 in the afternoon with searing pain in my left side, like someone had set my ribs on fire from the inside. I tried to call for a nurse, but my throat was too dry from the breathing tube. I heard machines beeping around me. I realized I was completely alone in the recovery bay. For the next 6 hours, nurses checked my vitals every hour with minimal interaction. At 4 in the afternoon, one nurse mentioned, "Your father came through surgery great. His kidney is already functioning. Your family's with him now in ICU." I asked if someone could come to my room. She said, "They're focused on your dad right now, honey. I'll let them know you're asking." No one came. At 8 that night, a different nurse named Linda came in. She looked at me for a long moment and said, "Sweetie, do you have someone you want me to call? You shouldn't be alone after major surgery like this." I told her my family was here, they're just with my dad. Linda's face changed. "Your mom and sister have been in your dad's ICU room since 3 this afternoon. They know you're awake, right?" "I think so," I said. "Want me to go get them?" she asked gently. "It's okay," I said. "He needs them more." Linda looked at me with something like pity in her eyes. "That's not how this works, sweetie," she said softly. At 9:30, my mother finally appeared at the foot of my bed. They're moving you to a regular room, she said. Kenneth is stable. Everything went well. How is he? I asked. Better than expected. The kidney started working immediately. Dr. Patel said it's a perfect match. I waited for her to say thank you, to acknowledge what I'd just done. Instead, she said, get some rest. We'll check on you tomorrow. She left. No one had said thank you. You need to hear what happens next because this is where my father made his move. Stay with me because the documents he signed while I was recovering will blow your mind. At 2:50 in the morning on September 16th, my door opened quietly. My father was in a wheelchair, pushed by a night nurse. He had an oxygen tank attached to his chair. He looked weak and pale, but he was there. I told them I needed to see you, he whispered. The nurse said, 5 minutes. He's not supposed to be out of ICU. My father wheeled his chair close to my bed and took my hand. He was crying. I see you, Emma, he said. I've always seen you, and I'm going to make this right. I was crying too. Dad, it's okay, I said. It's not okay, he said firmly. It's never been okay. The way your mother treats you, the way I've let her, I'm going to fix it. You don't have to, I told him. I do, he said. I should have done it 34 years ago. As the nurse wheeled him back toward ICU, he said over his shoulder, tomorrow morning some people are coming to see me. A social worker and a lawyer. I'm taking care of something important. What I didn't know was that at 11:30 the next morning, September 16, 2025, my father signed a document in his ICU room. Sarah Mitchell, the social worker, was there. Robert Chin, an estate attorney, was there. Dr. Patel was there as a witness. My father, still weak but completely lucid, signed a durable power of attorney for healthcare. He changed his medical proxy from my mother to me. It was witnessed, notarized, and time-stamped. I didn't know any of this was happening. 2 days later, on September 18, he signed another document, a life insurance beneficiary change form for his Northwestern Mutual policy, number NM947382, worth $2.3 million. The beneficiary had been my mother for 18 years. He changed it to me. On September 20th, he signed a third document, a restricted stock transfer agreement for Clark Medical Supply Company. My father owned 68% of the company he'd founded. He transferred 51% of voting shares to me, giving me majority control. On September 25th, that transfer was filed with the North Carolina Secretary of State. I knew absolutely nothing about any of this. The first 2 weeks after surgery were brutal. I was on complete bed rest. I couldn't lift more than 5 pounds. I couldn't drive. I couldn't reach the plates on the top shelf of my kitchen cabinets. I couldn't carry my laundry basket down the stairs. I slept 16 hours a day. No one offered to help. My mother called once and asked, "How are you managing?" I said I was fine. She said, "Good. Kenneth's kidney function is 95%. Perfect." Then she hung up. On day 10, Jessica texted me, "How's recovery going?" "Fundraiser planning is going great." So excited. In week 2, my boss Jennifer called. "Emma, we need to talk about your leave. We don't have paid medical leave for this long. You're at 2 weeks unpaid now. How much longer do you need?" The surgeon said 6 to 9 weeks total, I told her. "We can hold your position through 8 weeks, Jennifer said. After that, I can't make promises." I realized I could lose my job on top of everything else. Week 3, I tried to work from home. I could manage 2 to 3 hours before exhaustion hit like a wall. Week 4, I developed a fever of 101.2. I went to urgent care. Another $1,200 after insurance. I started calculating my total costs. 9 weeks of unpaid leave, $6,300 in lost wages. My insurance deductible, $2,500. Non-covered pre-surgery tests, $890. The urgent care visit for the infection, $1,200. Prescriptions, $340. Total out-of-pocket, $11,230. My savings account had $3,100 before all of this started. I was now overdrawn by $200. I applied for a medical hardship payment plan, $200 a month for 12 months. I had no idea how I'd actually pay it. Meanwhile, Jessica's fundraiser was everywhere. Local news segments about local executive leads kidney health fundraiser. Company LinkedIn posts with photos of Jessica looking professionally compassionate. Instagram stories about her dedication to family. The event was scheduled for October 15th at Pinehurst Country Club. I wasn't invited. One article mentioned supporting the Clark family's medical journey. My name was not mentioned once. In week 6, I finally opened a letter my father had sent me. It contained a check for $2,000. The note said, "For your medical expenses." I know it's not enough. I'm sorry I can't do more right now without raising questions. I stared at that phrase, without raising questions. What did that mean? I deposited the check. It covered 18% of my debt. I'd been avoiding social media during recovery, but in early November a coworker sent me a link to Jessica's Instagram. The fundraiser had happened on October 15th. 150 guests, silent auction, speeches about family and resilience. Jessica's post showed her holding an oversized check. My mother in an evening gown beside her, beaming with pride. My father in a wheelchair, smiling weakly. Jessica's husband Marcus in a tuxedo. The caption read, "Overwhelmed with gratitude." Together we raised $83,200 for kidney disease research. My father's journey inspired this, and I'm honored to lead this initiative. Family is everything. There were 2,156 likes. The top comment said, "You're amazing, Jessica. What an incredible daughter." I scrolled through the 23 photos from the event. I appeared in exactly one photo, far in the background, blurry and out of focus. You could only tell it was me because I recognized the blue cardigan I'd worn. I called the National Kidney Foundation to ask about the donation. They confirmed receiving $83,200 in October, a wonderful contribution. I asked who gets the tax credit. Individual donors receive deductions, they explained, but corporate matching is credited to Clark Medical Supply Company. My father's company had gotten a $41,600 tax write-off. I searched for Clark Medical Supply press releases from 2025. I found one dated October 18th. CMSC demonstrates corporate social responsibility with matching donation to kidney health. VP Jessica Clark Morrison spearheaded initiative aligning with company values. I searched Jessica's LinkedIn. She'd updated her profile. New headline, VP of Operations, Healthcare Advocate, Nonprofit Fundraising Leader. I found an industry publication from October 22 titled Rising Stars in Medical Supply. The article quoted Jessica, "In times of family crisis, true leaders emerge." I knew I had to step up and transform our personal challenge into an opportunity for community impact. I read that sentence 5 times. This wasn't about my father's health or my sacrifice. This was Jessica's audition to be CEO. On November 15, 2025, 9 weeks after my surgery, Dr. Patel cleared me for normal activity with permanent restrictions. No contact sports, kidney monitoring every 6 months for life, I can never donate an organ again, slightly higher risk for hypertension long term. I was finally cleared to return to work full-time. That same day, I received a text from my mother. Family dinner Sunday, November 23. Post-Thanksgiving celebration for Kenneth's recovery. 6 p.m., Riverside Hall, private room, 22 guests, cocktail attire. Be there, please. No mention of my donation. Just be there. I stared at that message for 10 minutes, then typed back, I'll be there. Before I tell you what happened at that dinner, I need you to understand something. If you've ever felt invisible, erased, or taken for granted by your own family, subscribe to this channel right now because I share these stories to remind you that you're not crazy, your feelings are valid, and sometimes the universe does deliver justice. Comment below and tell me about a time someone took credit for your work, because your story matters and I want to hear it. On November 20th, I went shopping for a dress. I'd lost weight during recovery and nothing fit anymore. I bought a navy dress for $89, stretching my already devastated budget even further. The dress showed my scar when I moved, 2 inches of pink raised tissue visible above the neckline. I considered returning it and finding something that covered the scar completely. Then I decided no, let them see what this actually cost. On November 22nd, the night before the dinner, I couldn't sleep. At 10:17, I called my father. Dad, I need to know something. Is Mom going to mention the donation at dinner? There was a long silence. Emma, I can't control what your mother says, but I can control what happens after. Please trust me. Come tomorrow. Will you say something about the donation? I asked. Come tomorrow, he said again. That's all I can say right now. His voice was shaking. November 23, 2025, 6:08 in the evening. I arrived at Riverside Hall. The private dining room was called the Sterling Room, and it was set for 24 people, though only 22 would actually show. There were name cards at each place setting. I found mine at position 18 out of 22. I was seated between my cousin Thomas, who I'd met maybe twice in my life, and my cousin Rachel, who'd at least texted me when Dad collapsed. At the head of the table was my father. To his right sat my mother, then Jessica, then Jessica's husband Marcus. To his left sat my father's sister Patricia, then his brother David. I was at the far end of the table, nearly out of sight from the head. Rachel whispered to me, "Why are you sitting way down here?" "I don't know," I said. "Mom did the seating chart," Rachel said, shaking her head. From 6:15 to 6:45, there was a cocktail hour with past appetizers. I stood near the table holding a glass of water because I was still on pain medication and couldn't drink alcohol. Jessica was near my father's chair, showing people photos of the fundraiser on her phone, narrating each picture. My mother was working the room, hugging relatives, accepting congratulations for my father's recovery. No one approached me except Rachel, who whispered, "We need to talk after this," and Margaret Foster, my father's assistant of 28 years, who made eye contact with me from across the room and mouthed, "I'm sorry." And Jessica's 8-year-old daughter Lily, who walked up to me and said, "Aunt Emma, why do you have that scar?" "I had surgery, sweetie," I said. "Did it hurt?" she asked. "Yes," I told her honestly. "Mommy says you should cover scars at fancy dinners," Lily said innocently. I forced a smile. "Sometimes scars are important to show," I said. Jessica overheard. Her face flashed something, guilt maybe, for half a second. Then it smoothed over and she pulled Lily away. "Come here, honey. Let's get you some shrimp." At 6:42, my mother tapped a spoon against her champagne glass. "Everyone, please take your seats. We're about to begin." I walked to position 18. When I bent to sit, I felt a sharp pain in my left side, still healing. I winced. Rachel noticed. "You okay?" she whispered. "Fine," I said. The table filled up. My father was wheeled to the head by venue staff. He was stronger now but still used a walker for short distances. He made eye contact with me down the length of the table. His eyes looked sad and determined at the same time. I nodded at him. My mother sat down and smoothed her napkin with this look of complete satisfaction. Jessica sat and glanced at me once, then looked away. The appetizer course was served, butternut squash soup. I couldn't eat. My stomach was in knots. Then my mother stood up. She tapped her glass again. Everyone, before we order our entrees, I want to say a few words about why we're here tonight. She was standing at the head of the table, all eyes on her, exactly where she wanted to be. 3 months ago, she began, we almost lost Kenneth. Stage 4 kidney failure. The doctors said without a transplant, he'd be on dialysis for the rest of his life. It was the scariest moment of our family's life. She paused dramatically, letting the weight of her words settle over the room. But in that darkness, one person stepped up. One person showed extraordinary leadership, compassion, and strength. My heart started pounding because I knew exactly where this was going. That person, my mother continued, her voice rising with emotion, organized a fundraiser that brought our entire community together. She raised $83,200 for kidney disease research. She coordinated teams, managed logistics, and held this family together when I was falling apart. I looked at my father. He was staring at his plate, his jaw clenched so tight I could see the muscle jumping. My mother raised her glass high. Please join me in raising your glasses. She turned toward Jessica with the biggest, proudest smile. To Jessica, my incredible daughter, the one who saved your father's life. My father's sister Patricia tried to speak up. Claire, wait, I thought, but my mother talked right over her. To Jessica. 22 glasses rose in the air. Clink, clink, clink. The sound of glass on glass moved around the table like a wave. My glass stayed on the table. I couldn't move. I literally could not lift my hand. Jessica stood up and dabbed at her eyes. The tears looked real. Thank you, Mom, she said, her voice breaking. It was the hardest thing I've ever done, but Dad is worth it. Family is everything. The room erupted in applause. Jessica hugged my mother. Marcus stood and clapped because he genuinely didn't know the truth yet. Lily and her brother clapped because that's what kids do when everyone else is clapping. My father's hand stayed flat on the table. He wasn't clapping. My cousin next to me said, "Your sister is incredible. You must be so proud." I couldn't speak. I just nodded. My vision was blurring. I stood up. My chair scraped back loudly. Several people looked at me. I was heading for the door, ready to walk out and never come back. And then my father's hand shot out and grabbed my wrist. His grip was strong despite everything he'd been through. I stopped. The entire table was watching now. My father's eyes locked on mine. He was crying. Without speaking, he slid a folded napkin across the table toward me with his other hand. He whispered, only loud enough for me to hear, "Read it. Please don't leave yet." I picked up the napkin. My mother said from the other end of the table, "Emma, are you all right?" I looked at her and my voice came out cold and controlled. "I'm fine, Mom. Just processing how generous Jessica is." I sat back down. I unfolded the napkin in my lap, below the table where no one could see. I read it. The handwriting was my father's, shaky but clear. I changed the medical proxy to September 16th, life insurance $2.3 million, your sole beneficiary, filed September 18th. The business, 51% voting shares transferred to you, executed September 20th, filed with state September 25th. They don't know yet. Attorney Chen has everything. I'm sorry I waited so long. I see you now. Dad. I read it once, twice, 3 times. I looked up at my father down the length of that table. He nodded, barely perceptible. I folded the napkin carefully. I put it in my purse. I took a deep breath and somehow made it through the rest of that dinner. I ate mechanically while conversation flowed around me. Relatives kept congratulating Jessica, asking about the fundraiser, praising her leadership. I said absolutely nothing. At 8:45, dinner ended. I stood, thanked my mother for hosting, hugged my father, and walked out. I didn't look back. Behind me, I heard the room erupt. I heard my mother's voice, shrill and confused, "Kenneth, what's wrong with Emma?" And I heard my father's voice, firm for the first time in decades, "I let her fix what I broke." In the parking lot, I sat in my car and pulled out the napkin. I read it again under the dome light. My hands were shaking now. He'd changed everything. September 16th, the day after my surgery, while I was alone in recovery, he was signing a medical proxy. September 18th, the life insurance. September 20th, the shares. While they were planning Jessica's publicity stunt, he was transferring power to me. 51% voting shares meant majority control of the entire company. $2.3 million was supposed to be my mother's financial security. Medical proxy meant decision-making authority if he couldn't speak for himself. And they didn't know yet. My phone rang. My father. I answered. "Did you read it?" he asked. "Yes," I said. "Do you understand what it means?" "I think so," I said. "Use the power, Emma. Fix what I broke or burn it all down. Your choice. I'll support you either way." I drove home in silence. At 10:15, I checked my voicemail. I'd missed a call from Robertson, the attorney my father had mentioned. There was a message. "Ms. Clark, Robertson returning your call. I've been waiting to hear from you. Your father said you'd reach out after the family dinner. I can see you Monday, November 25th at 9 a.m. We have quite a bit to discuss. Everything your father executed is ironclad. Witnesses, notarization, proper filing. I'll walk you through it all. See you Monday." This is where everything changes. If you want to see entitled people get exactly what they deserve, you need to subscribe because the confrontation that's coming is absolutely epic. Comment below if you think I was too harsh or if I should have gone even harder. Keep watching because justice is about to be served. Saturday, November 29th, my mother called Northwestern Mutual to update her mailing address on what she thought was her life insurance policy. The agent said, "I'll need to verify beneficiary information first." My mother said, "That's me, Claire Clark." There was a pause. "Ma'am, according to our records, you're no longer the beneficiary on this policy." The change was effective September 18th. My mother's voice went sharp. "That's impossible. Who's the beneficiary?" The agent said, "Emma M. Clark." Silence. Then my mother said, "There must be a mistake." The agent said, "Ma'am, we have the signed beneficiary change form. Would you like me to mail you a copy?" My mother hung up. She called my father immediately. I heard about this conversation later. She was screaming, "You changed the insurance behind my back? After 42 years of marriage?" My father's voice was calm. "It's done, Claire. Emma is the donor. Emma gets the policy." My mother said, "You changed it without telling me." My father said, "Like you erased her at dinner without telling her she'd be invisible?" "We both made choices, Claire." She said, "I'll contest this." He said, "You can't. I'm the policy holder. I don't need your permission." She hung up and immediately called her attorney. Monday, December 1st, Jessica was preparing materials for an executive committee meeting. She was reviewing the updated board packet when she saw it. Shareholder registry updated September 25, 2025. Kenneth Clark, 17% non-voting. Claire Clark, 25% non-voting. Jessica Clark Morrison, 7% non-voting. Emma M. Clark, 51% voting. Jessica read it 3 times. Then she grabbed the filing, drove to my parents' house, and burst into my father's study. "What the hell is this?" she demanded, throwing the papers on his desk. "She doesn't know anything about the business. She works at a non-profit making $36,000 a year." My father looked at her calmly. "She's my daughter and she saved my life. You threw a party for yourself." Jessica's voice cracked. "I raised $83,000. He said, you raised your profile." Emma gave me her kidney. Jessica said, "You're punishing me for not being a genetic match?" My father said quietly, "I'm rewarding her for being invisible for 34 years while you took everything." That evening, Jessica went home to her mother. They sat at Jessica's dining table surrounded by documents, plotting their next move. My mother said, "The life insurance is his to control. I can't contest it unless I prove incompetence or coercion. Neither applies." Jessica said, "What about the shares? Can we challenge the transfer?" My mother said, "Not legally. He's the founder. He can distribute however he wants." Jessica said, "So Emma just gets everything? The company, the insurance, all of it?" My mother's voice went cold. "Unless we make her fail. If she tries to run the company and destroys it, the board can vote her out." Jessica said, "She has 51% though." My mother leaned forward. "But if she's incompetent, we can build a case. We undermine every decision she makes, turn the staff against her, leak to industry press that the company's in chaos, make her look incompetent. Then Kenneth realizes his mistake and takes it back." From the doorway, Jessica's husband Marcus spoke up. "You're planning to sabotage your own sister?" Jessica turned. "She's sabotaging us. Dad chose her over his wife and his competent daughter." Marcus said quietly, "Your dad chose the daughter who gave him a kidney over the daughter who took credit for it. There's a difference." He walked away. That was the first crack in Jessica's marriage. December 2nd, my mother called me. Her voice was ice. "We need to talk about your father's decisions." "What about them?" I asked. "You manipulated a sick man into signing over his assets while he was medicated and vulnerable." "I didn't manipulate anyone," I said. "I didn't even know until after dinner." "Convenient story," she said. "You donate a kidney, play the martyr, and cash in. Very calculated, Emma." "I'm hanging up now," I said. "You think you can run Clark Medical? You'll destroy it in 6 months, and when you do, we'll take it back." I looked at my phone. "Is that a threat, Mom?" I asked. "It's a fact," she said. "You're out of your depth. You always have been." I said, "We'll see." And I hung up. I texted Robertson. "They know. Both of them. What do I do next?" He responded immediately. "Schedule a board meeting. Exercise your authority or they'll assume you won't." But I needed one more thing first. On December 5th, I called Presbyterian Hospital Medical Records Department. I requested a complete copy of my medical records from my living donor surgery, September 15th through discharge on September 22nd. They said it would be ready in 3 business days, $25 processing fee. Sunday, December 8th, I picked up a thick manila envelope. I got home and opened it on my kitchen table. Surgical notes, discharge summary, medication lists, post-surgery care instructions. And stapled in the middle, an ethics committee review dated August 20th, 2025. I started reading and my heart was pounding. There was an incident report dated August 18th, 2025, 2:15 p.m. Claire Clark, patient's mother, presented to my office requesting consultation. Mrs. Clark stated, "Is there any way to delay this donation or find another donor?" Emma isn't stable enough for this. When asked to clarify, Mrs. Clark stated, Emma has emotional issues. I'm worried she's doing this for attention. She doesn't have the maturity for this kind of decision. I explained the donor had passed all psychological evaluations. Mrs. Clark insisted I look closer at the donor's mental state. Per protocol, I documented this conversation and reported it to the Transplant Ethics Committee. Signed, Sarah Mitchell, LCSW. I kept reading. Ethics Committee Meeting Notes, August 20, 2025. Committee interviewed donor Emma Clark separately. Donor is fully informed, psychologically stable, and donating voluntarily. Mother's concerns appear to stem from controlling family dynamics rather than legitimate medical issues. Proceeding with donation as scheduled. Mother's attempt to interfere is noted in file. I sat there for a long time. My mother had tried to stop the donation. She'd gone to the hospital social worker 3 days after I tested compatible. She tried to label me emotionally unstable. She'd wanted them to find a different donor. She had literally tried to stop me from saving my father's life. The next morning, December 9th, I called the hospital and asked for Sarah Mitchell. This is Sarah, she answered. I identified myself. Ms. Mitchell, I received my medical records yesterday. There's an ethics committee report from August about my mother. Can you explain this to me? There was a pause. I can discuss your own medical documentation with you, Emma. Those are your records. So my mother really came to your office on August 18th, I said. Yes, Sarah confirmed. She tried to stop the donation. She said you weren't emotionally stable. I documented it and reported it to the ethics committee per hospital protocol. I asked why she'd done that. Sarah's voice was gentle. Emma, I want you to know, the committee saw right through it. We interviewed you separately. You were completely sound. Your mother's attempt to interfere was highly unusual. In 15 years doing this work, I've seen families pressure donors to donate. I've never seen a mother try to stop a daughter from saving her father's life. I asked if these records could be used in other contexts, like corporate governance. Sarah said, they're your medical records. You can use them however you need to. They're time-stamped, signed, official hospital documentation. I thanked her. She said, good luck with whatever you're planning, Emma. December 16, 2025, 2 p.m. Clark Medical Supply Company, 4th floor conference room. Quarterly board meeting. 7 board members were present. My mother as CFO, Jessica as VP of Operations, my father as Chairman Emeritus, and me as majority shareholder attending for the first time ever. Also present were Philip Morrison, company attorney, Andrea Torres, HR director, and 3 department heads. I arrived in a navy blazer and white shirt. The hospital bracelet from September was still on my wrist. I'd kept it on purpose. My scar was visible above my collar. I carried a folder. I walked to the head of the table where my mother was already sitting. I didn't say anything. I just stood there and looked at her. She moved. I sat down. My mother said, Emma, you're not usually at these meetings. I looked at her, my voice calm. I'm the majority shareholder now. I thought I should start attending. Silence around the table. Board members glanced at each other. Jessica started to speak, but I slid the corporate filing across the table. Filed September 25th with the North Carolina Secretary of State. You can verify it yourself. I hold 51% voting shares. Douglas Harper, one of the board members, looked at my father. Is this true, Kenneth? My father nodded. I transferred shares to Emma in late September. It's legal and final. I opened my folder. Before we proceed with today's agenda, I need to correct something in the October board minutes. I looked at my mother. Mom, you told this board that Jessica organized a fundraiser that brought the family together through Dad's medical journey. You implied Jessica was central to Dad's recovery. I pulled out documents and slid papers across the table to Philip Morrison. Let me correct the record. I donated my left kidney to my father on September 15, 2025. Here's the hospital discharge summary. Here's my donor compatibility report, 98% match, tested July 28. Here's the surgical record showing living donor nephrectomy. I pulled my collar down slightly so the scar was fully visible. I lost 9 weeks of work. I have permanent medical monitoring for life. I have $11,000 in out-of-pocket costs. I have this scar. Board members stared. My mother's face went completely white. Jessica was looking at the table. My father's eyes were closed. At the family recovery dinner on November 23, I continued, my mother toasted Jessica for saving Dad's life. 22 people raised their glasses to my sister. No one mentioned my name. I sat at position 18 wearing this scar, invisible. Douglas Harper was reading the medical documents, his face changing with every page. I pulled out more papers. I also have documentation that my mother attempted to prevent my donation. I slid Sarah Mitchell's incident report across the table, along with the ethics committee notes. August 18, 2025, my mother went to the hospital social worker and asked if there was any way to delay the donation or find another donor. She stated I wasn't stable enough. She said I had emotional issues and was doing it for attention. The Transplant Ethics Committee investigated and cleared me. They concluded my mother's concerns stemmed from controlling family dynamics, not legitimate medical issues. My mother tried to stop me from saving my father's life. Andrea Torres was taking notes, her hand shaking. Douglas Harper looked at my mother. Mrs. Clark, is this accurate? My mother's voice was tight. That was taken out of context. I was concerned about Emma's well-being. I said, the social worker documented your exact words. The ethics committee concluded your concerns were about control, not medicine. It's in the official hospital record. Philip Morrison spoke carefully. Claire, did you attempt to interfere with a medical procedure? My mother didn't answer. I let the silence sit for a long moment. Then I stood. Which brings me to why I'm here today. I'm exercising my authority as majority shareholder. My voice was steady and clear. Effective immediately, I am removing Claire Clark from her position as Chief Financial Officer, pending investigation into financial management and ethics violations. My mother stood up. You can't do this. I said, I can. I have 51% voting authority. Company Bylaws, Article 7, Section 3. Majority shareholder can remove officers with or without cause. Philip, can you confirm? Philip looked at the bylaws in front of him. That's correct, he said. I turned to Jessica. Jessica Clark Morrison, you have 48 hours to choose. Option 1, accept a new role as Senior Manager of Special Projects at $92,000 annual salary. Option 2, we discuss a severance arrangement. You have until Thursday at 5 p.m. to decide. Jessica was crying silently. I am taking operational control until we hire an external CEO, I said to the full board. I'm requesting a vote to approve these changes. As majority shareholder, I technically don't need approval, but I want this on record. Douglas Harper spoke up. I move to approve the removal of Claire Clark as CFO and restructuring of the executive team. Andrea Torres said, second. Philip Morrison said, all in favor? 5 hands went up. My father abstained. 1 board member, my mother's longtime ally, abstained. Motion carries, Philip said. I picked up my folder. Meeting adjourned. Claire, please collect your personal items from your office by end of day. Jessica, report to Andrea by Thursday with your decision. Everyone else, thank you for your time. I walked out. I didn't look back. Behind me, the room erupted. I heard my mother's voice, shrill and desperate, "Kenneth, how could you let her do this?" And my father's voice, firm for the first time in 34 years, "I let her fix what I broke." The aftermath was swift and brutal. My mother moved out of the family home on December 17th. She stayed with Jessica. She hired an attorney to contest the share transfer. Her attorney reviewed the documents and called her on December 19th. "Mrs. Clark, these documents are ironclad. Witnessed, notarized, properly filed. You have no legal grounds to challenge them. If you contest this, you'll lose and pay significant legal fees. My advice is don't." On December 19th, Jessica's husband Marcus came home from work. A colleague had mentioned something. "Did you know your sister-in-law donated the kidney?" Marcus was confused. "What?" Jessica organized the fundraiser. His colleague said, "No, Emma Clark donated her kidney." It was in the board meeting documentation that leaked. Marcus went home and found Jessica in the kitchen. "Why did I just find out from a colleague that Emma donated the kidney? I stood at that dinner and applauded you. I looked like an idiot." Jessica's voice was small. "It's complicated, Marcus." He said, "Complicated? You let your mother toast you for your sister's kidney donation. You let me think you were the hero. What the hell is wrong with you?" That was the beginning of the end of their marriage. On December 20th, Jessica met with Andrea Torres to make her decision. Option 1, senior manager at $92,000, or Option 2, severance. Jessica's pride wouldn't let her quit. "I'll take the demotion," she said. "I'm staying." On December 23rd, Christmas Eve, I received a certified letter. My mother was filing for divorce from my father. I called him. "Dad, I'm sorry this happened." His voice was calm. "Don't be. This should have happened 20 years ago. I'm finally free." December 30th, 11:14 p.m., there was a knock on my apartment door. I opened it to find Jessica standing there, drunk, mascara running down her face, coat thrown over pajamas. "What are you doing here, Jess?" I asked. She pushed past me into my apartment and collapsed on my couch, crying. "She made me this way, Emma. Mom, she told me since I was 6 years old that I was the special one, that I had to be perfect, that you were Dad's mistake." I stood there, didn't sit down. "Do you know what it's like," Jessica said, her voice breaking, "being the good daughter? Every A, every achievement, every promotion, it was never enough. She always needed more. And you were free. You got to leave. You got to be yourself." I said quietly, "I wasn't free, Jessica. I was erased." She looked up at me, her face wrecked. I know that now. But I didn't see it then." She wiped her face. "I didn't know she tried to stop your donation. I swear to you, Emma." When Marcus showed me the board meeting documentation, when I read what she did, I threw up. I physically threw up. My own mother tried to stop you from saving Dad's life. I sat down, not next to her, across from her. Jessica continued, "The fundraiser, she told me to do it. September 17th, 2 days after your surgery. She said, Jessica, we need to control the narrative. If Emma gets credit for this, she'll use it against us." I said, "Against us?" "She saved Dad." She said, "She'll hold it over our heads forever. We need a counter-narrative." Jessica was sobbing now. "So I threw a party. I took credit. I let you disappear. And when Marcus found out, he looked at me like I was a monster. She wiped her face with her sleeve. My therapist, I started seeing one after the board meeting, she said I've been emotionally abused by mom my entire life. That being the golden child is its own kind of prison. But Emma, that doesn't excuse what I did. It explains it, but it doesn't excuse it. I looked at her, my sister, really looked at her for the first time in years. She was broken too, just differently. You're still demoted, Jessica, I said firmly. And I can't be your sister right now. Maybe not ever. But I hear you. And I believe you're sorry. That'll have to be enough. She nodded and stood to leave. At the door, she turned. Can I ask you something? What? I said. Why did you do it? Donate the kidney after everything we did to you? I thought about it for a moment. Because he's my dad and I loved him. Even when he didn't protect me. Even when he let her erase me, I loved him. That doesn't go away just because people hurt you. Jessica's voice was barely a whisper. You're better than me, Emma. I said, I just made different choices. On January 15, 2026, I hired Dr. Rebecca Santos as the external CEO of Clark Medical Supply Company. She was 52, former VP at Cardinal Health, 25 years in medical supply, clean reputation, no ties to my family. The board approved unanimously. I transitioned to board chair. I kept my 51% shares. I took a salary of $95,000. I also kept my part-time job at Hope Bridge Education Fund, 20 hours a week, because I loved the work and I wasn't going to give that up. I used the company's salary to pay off my medical debt, all $11,000, and I started building real savings for the first time in my life. I also created something new, the Living Donor Support Fund. Clark Medical Supply would contribute $50,000 a year to help living donors with medical costs, lost wages, and recovery expenses. The first recipient was a woman named Maria. She was 28. She donated a kidney to her brother and lost her job during recovery. I handed her a check for $5,000. She looked at me with tears in her eyes. You did this? You created this fund? I said, someone should have done it for me. Now we do it for others. On February 14, Valentine's Day, I met my father for dinner at a small diner near the hospital where all of this had started. Are you okay? He asked me. I'm getting there, I said. Are you? He said, I'm proud of you. I should have said that more. I looked at him directly. You should have said it 34 years ago, Dad. He nodded. I know. We ate in silence for a moment. Then I said, I don't forgive you yet for all those years, but I'm trying to understand. He said, I don't deserve forgiveness. I just want to know you're going to be okay. I told him, I'm building something new. The company, the fund, my life. I'm not invisible anymore. He reached across the table and put his hand on mine. You were never invisible to me. I just didn't know how to make you visible to them without losing everything. I said, you chose wrong, but you chose right in the end. That's something. He told me then that he and my mother had signed a legal separation agreement the week before. The divorce would finalize after the required 1-year separation period in December 2026. How do you feel? I asked. Free, he said. Terrified, but free. I smiled slightly. Good. You should be. It's March now, 6 months after the surgery. I still work at Hope Bridge part-time. I'm still board chair at Clark Medical Supply. The company is stable, revenue is up 8%, morale has improved. My mother lives in Tampa, Florida. We have minimal contact. The divorce is pending. Jessica works as a project manager at a different medical company in Charlotte, making $78,000 a year. She's in therapy twice a week and marriage counseling with Marcus. I don't know if they'll make it. We haven't spoken in 3 months. My father is healthy. His kidney function is stable at 92%. He lives alone in a small apartment. He sold the family house and split the proceeds with my mother per the separation agreement. We have coffee every Sunday. I moved to a 1-bedroom apartment, $13.50 a month, and I can actually afford it now. I have $12,000 in savings. My medical debt is paid off. The scar is still there, 6 inches of pink raised tissue. It aches sometimes when it's cold or when I move the wrong way. I don't hide it anymore. Today I'm at my office at Hope Bridge. A young woman named Stephanie came in. She's 24. She needs help navigating the living donor process for her father. I want to donate, she tells me, but my family doesn't think I should. My sister is the responsible one. They want her to do it even though I'm a better match. I see myself in her face, in the way she's fighting to be seen. I roll up my sleeve and show her my scar. The surgery is the easy part, I tell her. It's what comes after. Making sure people see your sacrifice. That's the battle. You deserve to be seen. Don't let anyone take that from you. Her eyes fill with tears. What if I do this and they still don't see me? What if I do this and they still choose her? I lean forward. Then you'll know. And you'll have the power to choose yourself. That's what the scar teaches you. You survived. You can survive anything. She nods. She thanks me. She leaves. I sit there for a moment and feel something shift inside, not revenge, not bitterness, but purpose. I'm turning my pain into protection for others. That's healing. At the end of the day, I walk to my car. It's a March evening, 6:30, the air is cold and I can see my breath. My phone buzzes. A text from my father. Coffee Sunday? I type back, always. Another text from Margaret, my father's assistant. Board meeting materials ready for Monday. Rebecca's doing great. I respond, thanks, Margaret. I stop at my car and look at my reflection in the window. I see the scar. I see myself. Not invisible, not erased, not the golden child. Just Emma. Survivor, protector, free. I get in the car and drive away. The scar will always be there, but so will I.